In the heart of West Africa, beneath a canopy of ancient forests, a kingdom was born not from conquest alone, but from myth. Its power was said to descend from the heavens, sealed in a golden stool no one could sit upon. This was no ordinary throne. It was the soul of a nation. The Ashanti Empire would rise to dominate trade, challenge European powers, and leave behind a legacy carved in gold and fire. It stood not only as Ghana's greatest kingdom, but as one of Africa's proudest civilizations. This is the untold origin of the Ashanti people. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story from the ancient world. If you love exploring lost empires and powerful civilizations like the Ashanti, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Before the Ashanti, the Akan roots. Long before the Ashanti became a dominant empire, their roots lay within a much older and broader cultural heritage, the Akan people. Stretching across modern-day Ghana and parts of Côte d'Ivoire, the Akan were not a single nation, but a family of closely related clans and states, connected by language, belief systems, and trade. Among them were powerful states like the Bono, the Akim, and the Dankura, each laying the groundwork for what would one day become the Ashanti Kingdom. Culturally, the Akan had rich spiritual traditions. They believed in a supreme creator god and revered ancestors, whom they saw as guardians of the living. Rituals, festivals, and storytelling were essential to preserving history and transmitting wisdom across generations. By the 17th century, the balance of power among the Akan began to shift. A new center of strength was emerging in the forested interior around a town called Kumasi. There, under the leadership of visionary rulers, the Ashanti identity would begin to take shape, forged by tradition, faith, and an unyielding desire for unity. The birth of a kingdom. The Ashanti Kingdom did not emerge through gradual evolution alone. It was born in a moment of radical vision and spiritual destiny. At the heart of its creation stood two legendary figures: Osei Tutu, a brilliant military strategist and unifier, and Okomfo Anakai, a powerful priest whose influence was said to reach into the spiritual world. Together, they laid the foundation for what would become one of Africa's most powerful and enduring kingdoms. In the late 1600s, the Ashanti people were fragmented, living under the domination of the Dankura Empire, which demanded heavy tributes and loyalty. But Osei Tutu envisioned something greater, a confederation of clans united by shared language, faith, and purpose. To solidify this bond, Okomfo Anakai performed a sacred ritual that would become the cornerstone of Ashanti identity, the summoning of the Golden Stool. With the clans united under this divine authority, Osei Tutu was declared the first Asantewaa, or king of the Ashanti. The capital was established at Kumasi, which would grow into a vibrant political and cultural center. For the first time, the Ashanti were no longer a collection of villages. They were a nation, forged by myth, loyalty, and a shared belief that they were chosen to rise. But the birth of a kingdom was just the beginning. To survive, the Ashanti would now have to fight. Unification through war. Unity in name is not the same as unity in power. Once Osei Tutu declared the birth of the Ashanti Kingdom, he faced an immediate and brutal test. Could these newly unified people withstand the wrath of their former overlords? The Dankura Empire, once the most powerful state in the region, was not about to let its vassals break away without a fight. The decisive confrontation came in the early 1700s at the Battle of Fiais. Against overwhelming odds, the Ashanti crushed the Dankura forces. Their king, Ntim Jakari, was captured and executed. It was more than a military victory, it was a symbolic moment. The Ashanti had not only overthrown their oppressors, but had announced themselves as the new dominant power in the region. Following their victory, the Ashanti extended diplomatic overtures to neighboring Akan states, bringing them into the expanding confederation, sometimes peacefully, sometimes by force. Osei Tutu and his successors were careful to balance military might with political integration, using marriage alliances, rituals, and shared ceremonies to keep the unity alive. 4. The Golden Empire, wealth and trade. With victory over Denkura and the unity of the clan secured, the Ashanti began building not just a kingdom, but an empire. And like many great empires before them, their power flowed from one source: gold. The forests and rivers surrounding Kumasi were rich in gold deposits, making the Ashanti heartland one of the most coveted economic zones in West Africa. The Ashanti controlled the gold trade routes that stretched northward to the Sahel and eastward toward other Akan states. They developed advanced mining techniques, using tools and slave labor to extract gold dust, which became both currency and symbol. Gold adorned the nobility, ornamented temples, and served as tribute during royal ceremonies. It wasn't just wealth, it was identity. The Ashanti's growing wealth allowed them to maintain a complex system of royal courts, bureaucracies, and standing armies. Roads were built to connect major cities and outposts. Markets in Kumasi bustled with local and foreign merchants, while diplomatic missions ensured steady trade relations with coastal European forts, especially with the Dutch, and later, the British. This golden age of commerce positioned the Ashanti as both an African and international power. They were no longer just resisting colonizers. They were negotiating with them, leveraging gold and people to remain in control of their destiny. 5. The Ashanti society and governance. At the height of its power, the Ashanti Empire was more than a military machine or trading powerhouse. It was a sophisticated society governed by laws, customs, and institutions that reflected a deep understanding of order and identity. The empire's strength lay not just in its armies or gold, but in the governance system that held its vast and diverse territories together. The Ashanti legal system was based on customary law, passed down orally through generations. Trials were public and presided over by chiefs, with an emphasis on restorative justice rather than punishment. Crimes were seen as disruptions to social harmony, and penalties often involved compensation or ritual reconciliation. The capital, Kumasi, was the heartbeat of this administrative system. A city of palaces, courtyards, and markets, it stood as a symbol of unity, sophistication, and ritual. Every structure, from the royal court to the military barracks, reflected the belief that the Ashanti state was a sacred trust bound together by loyalty, law, and lineage. But beneath this order thrived a spiritual world that shaped every ritual, decision, and belief. 6. Spirituality, culture, and daily life. To understand the Ashanti people, one must enter a world where the spiritual and the material were deeply intertwined. Every event, birth, death, war, or harvest was guided by forces unseen. Spirituality wasn't a separate part of life. It was the foundation of existence. At the center of Ashanti belief was Nyam, the supreme creator god, distant yet omnipresent. Beneath Nyam were a host of lesser gods, Abuzum, each tied to natural elements like rivers, trees, or storms. These spirits could bless or curse, protect or punish, depending on how they were honored. Shrines and sacred groves dotted the landscape, tended by priests, akamfo, who acted as intermediaries between the people and the divine. In daily life, most Ashanti were farmers, cultivating yams, plantains, and cocoa. Artisans crafted Kent cloth, gold jewelry, and carved stools objects that were both beautiful and symbolic. The stool, in particular, wasn't just furniture. It was a person's soul made visible. Upon death, a person's stool was blackened and placed in a sacred space to join the ancestral spirits. This rich spiritual and cultural fabric united the Ashanti people. But just as their internal world thrived, a growing external threat loomed from across the sea. 7. Encounters with the Europeans. Long before the Ashanti rose to power, European ships had begun to dot the West African coastline. The Portuguese, Dutch, and later the British had all established forts along what came to be known as the Gold Coast, drawn by the promise of precious metals, spices, and above all human labor. For the Ashanti, these outsiders were not invaders, at least not initially. They were trading partners. From the late 1600s onward, the Ashanti developed a mutually beneficial relationship with European traders, particularly the Dutch. Through intermediaries, they exchanged gold and slaves for muskets, gunpowder, cloth, and alcohol. The flow of weapons allowed the Ashanti to strengthen their military, expand their territory, and maintain dominance over rival states. As the British expanded deeper inland, tensions turned into open hostility. The Ashanti, fiercely proud and protective of their autonomy, would not be bullied. What followed was nearly a century of wars, treaties, and betrayals, a protracted struggle between African independence and European imperialism. The first sparks of this conflict were about to ignite, and Kumasi would soon become a battlefield. 8. The Anglo-Ashanti Wars. Throughout the 19th century, rising tensions between the Ashanti Empire and the British reached a boiling point. What began as trade disagreements evolved into a series of brutal and drawn-out conflicts. The Anglo-Ashanti Wars, a century-long struggle for control of West Africa's interior. The first major conflict erupted in 1824, when the Ashanti launched a campaign to reclaim control over rebellious coastal states allied with the British. British forces, underestimating Ashanti's strength, were ambushed at the Battle of Nsamanko, where Governor Sir Charles McCarthy was killed and his skull famously turned into a war trophy, a chilling symbol of Ashanti defiance. Yet the kingdom refused to fully submit. Ashanti pride endured, and when the British demanded the Golden Stool itself in 1900, a symbol no one had ever dared touch, it provoked the War of the Golden Stool, led by the fierce Queen Mother, Asantewaa. Though ultimately defeated, she became a symbol of Ashanti resistance and courage. These wars marked the beginning of the end of Ashanti independence, but not the end of their story. 9. The fall and the legacy. By the dawn of the 20th century, the Ashanti Empire stood bruised but unbroken. Despite multiple wars and mounting British pressure, it remained defiant until one final confrontation sealed its fate. In 1901, following the War of the Golden Stool, the British formally annexed the Ashanti Kingdom into their expanding colony, declaring it part of the Gold Coast Protectorate. The annexation marked the end of Ashanti political sovereignty. The Asantewaa was exiled, the royal court dissolved, and Kumasi became a colonial administrative center. But if the British thought they had destroyed the Ashanti spirit, they misunderstood the people entirely. The Golden Stool, hidden and protected by loyalists, was never captured. The soul of a nation had survived. When Ghana gained independence in 1957, it became the first sub-Saharan African country to break free from colonial rule. Ashanti influence was central to this moment. Their legacy of unity, resistance, and spiritual strength continued to shape the nation's identity. The empire was gone, but the story of the Ashanti had entered a new phase. In gold and memory, in song and stool, their spirit endured. 10. The Ashanti today heritage and identity. Though the Ashanti Empire no longer commands armies or territories, its influence remains woven into the soul of modern Ghana. In the bustling streets of Kumasi, now Ghana's second-largest city, echoes of the old kingdom still linger. From royal processions to traditional festivals, the Ashanti continue to celebrate their heritage with pride and purpose. The Asantewaa today holds no political power under the Ghanaian constitution, but he is far from a ceremonial figure. He remains the spiritual and cultural leader of the Ashanti people, presiding over customary courts, settling disputes, and guiding moral and social values. The current Asantewaa, Otumfuo Osei Tutu, is a respected figure in national affairs, often called upon for diplomacy, peacekeeping, and charity work. In schools, museums, and homes, the story of the Ashanti Empire is taught not as a relic, but as a source of national pride. It's a story of unity, resilience, and sacred values that defied colonization and inspired liberation. If you found this journey into Ashanti history as powerful as we did, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the untold stories of ancient kingdoms and forgotten empires. What part of the Ashanti legacy surprised or inspired you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and until next time, history lives here.